Thank you very much. My name is Matteo Luppi. I'm going to present what is an initial phase of a research project that we are carrying out together with Valentina Gualtieri and Mineo Simona in the National Institute for Public Policy Analysis in Rome. The title is Human Capital Profile of Youth Insight from PIAAC Data. Basically, we did something similar of your presentation in more simplistic way, and we focus on youths. Why we focus on youths? Since I've only, the overview of the presentation, in the first slide I'm going to present why we focus on youth in relation to the Italian critical contextual situation, then the dimension of human capital that we consider in our analysis, the empirical, strategic, and the country selection, some evidence, preliminary evidence, the profile that we identified, and preliminary empirical testings, and then preliminary remarks. Why we focus on youths? I have not to go in detail on all of this indicator, but basically when you compare the youths, the Italian youth condition in relation to the EU average, the situation is very critical. In all indicators that you are going to, so in relation to the tertiary education, youth employment, the share of needs, the labor market entry, the Italy is far below or is far distant from the EU average. And on top of that, we have a particularly critical democratic structure issue, because in the next decade, the population in Italy is going to gray very fast. In the next 10 years, we are going to lose 6.1 million of those in working age. And in the long run, so between 24 and 2050, the working age population is going to shrink of 20%. Meanwhile, those aged 65 years old or over are going to pass from 25.3 to 34.6. So we are going to face a sustainability issue of the labor market, not only of the labor market, but the welfare system, the national system overall. So the idea of this project, that once again is an initial phase, is to provide empirical evidence in order to support the policymaking to deal and to face with this problem. We, in this phase, decided to try to charting the human capital of Italy, or not only in Italy, but we were with our focus in Italy, but in a comparative term, in focusing on identifying the group with similar human capital profile, comparing the distribution across national context, analyzing how time invariant individual variable characteristics relate to these groups, and then assessing the labor market return and examining school to work condition to inform policy. Although not all these operations or steps will be performed using PIAAC data, the first, and what we are going to present is a preliminary result of these phases. We are going to use PIAAC data, and then we are going to use a specific in-house survey that is going to start in a couple of months, the field phase, and it's quite interesting because for the first time in history, we were able to reach more than 60,000 youths aged between 18 and 24 years, and specifically asking them questions in relation to their education history, working history, and the transition to working history. So the framework of our idea in the end is to identify dimensions of human capital that are related to labor market returns. So we identified these 4 dimensions: schooling, learning, adult competencies, and trait of personality, non-cognitive skill. In relation to schooling, we focus on education attainment, so we employ the initial level. In relation to learning, we focus on the life learning, so the participation in formal and non-formal learning activity in the last 12 months. In relation to adult competencies, of course, we focus on adult cognitive skill, and in particular, we selected the numeracy, proficiency in numeracy, and then the personal trait, the big 5 component. Thus, we employ labor market-related return with a multiple dimension. There is no need that I stress again the particularly interesting of use also non-cognitive skill in this analysis. How we, empirical strategy and country selection. So we adopted a very more simplistic way of identifying our typology, basically for a couple of reasons. The first one is we working in a subgroup of population, so those aged between 25 and 34 years, so we have issue in sample size dimension. Also, since this is the first part, and then we translate this, the hope is to translate this typology in a national survey that has no all the variables, especially the cognitive variable that are in PIAAC, we stick on a more, let's say, we adopted a theoretical and logical basic approach. So we operationalize the 4 dimension basically in extremely summarize this dimension in dichotomics variable for schooling, learning, and personal trait, and also, but we keep 3 categories for adult competencies. So in schooling, we differentiate between young individuals, actually across all populations. So those aged above 25, we differentiate between those who have a theater degree or not, or lower. In relation to learning, those who perform in the 12 months, in the previous 12 months, formal and informal active learning activity. In relation to other competencies, we stick on 3 groups: low performer, those who enter in the 2nd and the 3rd level, and those who enter in the 4 or above level. Whereas in personal trait, probably we did the most radical summarization. Since this indicator is the only indicator that we treat on a national base, with a national base threshold, because the score and the path are already standardized within country, we decided that we differentiate because those individuals have 3 or more traits with a score above the national mean, otherwise known. Then our theoretical combination resulted in 10 groups and was quite comprehensive because applied to the overall population aged between 25 and 64 years, we was able to categorize basically all individuals except for 0.25% of individuals. We do not include those aged between 18 and 25 because basically they are still in formal education. Very preliminary validation, we ran logistic models. Actually, in the beginning of the project, the idea was completely different, to run very statistical class, as the presentation before, technique in order to identify the cluster, and also the validation, we want to use multi-level, multinomial logistic regression analysis in order to also see how the territorial characteristic, institutional, cultural, and so on, relate or associate with this profile. Of course, this was not possible because the country selection was purely related to data availability, and then in the end, we stick on 8 countries, so the countries that provide all the information that we need: Canada, Finland, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, and Great Britain. So also, there is only 3 countries that provide information at the NATSU level, so provide the information on NATSU level, so it was impossible to run also a multinomial, multi-level logistic model. So we decided to validate this model only using multinomial logistic model with a very parsimonial model run both on the pooled sample and on a country-based sample with 4 variables, time invariant variables that are gender, immigrant background, parental education, and the parental occupation of the parent at 14 years. And now, before presenting the descriptive statistic, the 4 profile identified. So we differentiate the 10 profile identified in 3 broad groups, let's say 2 broad groups and 1 in between. The first broad group, those who have, we call it medium to high potential profile, and are the first 4. All these profiles combine high education with high medium proficiency in numeracy, where they differ in relation to their big 5 characteristics or non-cognitive characteristic, exactly learning. So the first one, the dynamic intellect, are young, in this case, or individual with high education that has been engaged in active learning activity, that have a high medium level of proficiency in numeracy, and a positive personality trait, meaning 3 or above, 3 score above of the national mean. Then there are the accomplished intellect that differ compared to the previous, only in relation to engaging in active learning activities. Vulnerable dynamic intellect that are characterized by high level of education, active learning, high medium numeracy proficiency, but not positive personality, so less than 3 score above the national mean. And then the, let's say, more vulnerable profile of this medium to high potential profile, the vulnerable accomplished intellect, those who have high education, not engaging in activity learning, high medium numeracy proficiency, and not positive personality traits. And then on the opposite spectrum, the 4-10 cluster are as in the previous slide, they share all of this cluster are characterized by medium-low educational level, medium-low numeracy and proficiency, and then once again, they differ in relation to active learning and personal trait. The resilient learners are those who have medium education but are engaged, but they participate in active learning activities, medium numeracy, and a positive personal trait, so 3 and above national average. Resilient accomplishment differ because on top of that, they do not engage in active learning activities. Dynamic vulnerable, the only positive dimension, let's say, to be cruel, is that they are actively involved in learning activities. And then the systemic vulnerable, those who have no dimension, no positive dimension. In between, there are 2 profiles that we define as a misaligned potential, because on one hand, the misaligned are those who have a high education, but the proficiency is is low in numeracy. And we included this regardless the active learning activity and the personal trait. On the opposite side, the latent research are those who have medium to low education, but high medium numeracy, once again, regardless the characteristic in relation to active learning activity or personal trait. I'm going fast because this is as the distribution of the 10 clusters identified. In a nutshell, in the end, looking at the first line of the EU average, not the EU average, sorry, the average across 8 countries, the population is split more or less in the youth population into broad similar groups. On the one end, so the medium to high potential profile account for 43%, the medium to low potential profile account for the 49%. There is huge variety across, heterogeneity across country, of course. I'm interested in the Italian case, and the Italian case is the worst case scenario because only 33% of youths entering in the medium to high potential profile against 68% of those who enter in the medium to low potential profile. Similar characteristic in Poland, and and then the other countries are quite far. In the end, to summarize very short, in 4 countries, the medium to high potential profile is larger than those in the medium to low potential profile. These countries are Canada, Finland, France. It's moving. Canada, Finland, France, and Germany. And Great Britain. In the other 4 countries, the opposite situation is characterized by the opposite position. Preliminary testing. So this is the average predicted probability of the pooled sample model. So all 8 countries together, we corrected the weight. We adjusted the weight in using the jackknife technique in order to compare correctly all the country. And in this case, you can see on the left square the probability to be in the medium to low potential profile, and in the, let's say, in the dot indicator, whereas the blue square provides you the probability to be in the opposite aggregated profile, so the medium to high potential profile. The opposite situation is on the right side. What you can see is that, at least in relation to the medium to high potential profile, the results seem to suggest that we are looking in the right direction because each profile is statistically different from the other. There is no overlapping of confidence of the interval, whereas the situation in relation to medium to low potential profile, we have to work a little bit more because there is a clear overlapping in relation to all profile. Just the last result, because I guess I'm finished the time. This is the result of the medium to high potential profile. Once again, average predicted probability in the country-based model, so each country, a model for each country, and two results in a nutshell is, for me, a little bit worrying, the result of Italy, because in this case, the average predicted probability related to the immigrant background, so those who have native born parents, and those who have a foreign background. Basically, the okay, with the limitation of our model, but the results say that in Italy, if you have a foreign background, it's almost impossible that you ended up in a medium to high potential profile, because if you look at the probability of medium to low potential profile, close to 1, basically, is quite cruel. And then, but also, if you're born in a, so in a native born or native born parent family, you have a very high probability to end up in a medium to low potential profile. On the other hand, it's very interesting from a point of view, the result of Canada and Great Britain. Of course, they have a different immigration history and different migration channel, but the result suggests that for those who have a foreign background, there is no statistical difference in the probability of being in a medium to low potential profile compared to the other profile, whereas for the native born, the probability to be in a medium to low potential profile is higher compared to the other. So just the last slide. Oh, this is very, very preliminary evidence, and we started with a different, especially from a methodological point of view, idea, but then also in relation to the need to merge this analysis, also to provide this analysis with the ground for the next step of the project that will be based on a national survey. We adjusted our methodological idea. And okay, the results seem to provide that our mapping can be useful, especially in our context, as the Italian context, to analyze the relation between youths, to try to face the gap between youths and labor market. There is a high variability across country. There is, the result also stress the importance to have a multidisciplinary approach in testing and measuring human capital. And other first evidence that I have no time to show you, because we are very fresh, indicate that there is interesting evidence on the profile difference between 25 and 34 years and those aged above, especially in relation to the personal trait. And there's a clear labor market too. This is common in all countries for those ceteris paribus, those who are performing active learning activity perform really better in terms of employment rate. And this is it.